So we're going to jump back into Richard Morgan Casey's evidence to the Post Office Horizon IT inquiry, and he's talking about risk management, and he does ask some very pertinent questions, including, are there any other Horizon cases I need to be aware of? Because if I'm advising you on Mr. Lee Castleton's case, I want to know if there's something that's going to come up before a trial that says, hey, there's all these other people having problems with Horizon. He asks the question, but he never seems to get an answer, and why aren't these actually being followed up? Now, obviously, it's a long time ago, so he's having some issues remembering, but he is shown a email from one of the instructing solicitors, Stephen Dilley, where, albeit for a small amount, a subpostmaster who has temporarily taken over Marine Drive during Lee Castleton's suspension has experienced a small loss when a computer froze, which Richard Morgan Casey has already said he's aware of these screen freezes that could happen, where he's in the middle of serving a customer and that transaction was lost. Fortunately for him, he was taking money, but the transaction being done at the time for £1.27 actually resulted in a £1.27 surplus for him that day, because the transaction was lost and he wasn't prompted to re-enter it or complete it when he rebooted the system. Let's jump into the inquiry.
Good afternoon, sir. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much. Mr. Morgan, can we just go back to the document we were looking at shortly before lunch to ask one supplemental set of questions on it? It's poll 3072741. And if you remember, I was asking you questions about what evidence was and wasn't disclosed to you about bugs, errors and defects.
Yes.
And difficulties with producing data from Horizon and the extent to which this informed or didn't inform the nice legal point that you developed. And we had looked at the questions that you had asked on page 5 about can Fujitsu get in and change the raw data. Can we look at page 6, please? And if we look at the foot of the page, please, 3 paragraphs from the bottom. This is in the context of some other case. And you say, I would like also to know if it is a genuine one-off, and I would like to know if the number of allegations and the number of paper cases that have occurred, other than the Bajaj and Bilku cases, how many other allegations have been made, and how many have come to trial, and the outcomes of those. These need to be of a particular issue of persistent shortfalls, allegedly attributable to the computer system.
Essentially what he's saying there is are there any other Horizon cases at the moment, because that could have an effect on the case against Lee Castleton.
First of all, I take it that in line with the evidence you've given previously, you don't remember asking questions of that sort at this remove of time.
I've got no specific recollection. No, I'm just trying to think about what... So I think there must have been mention in my instructions about Bajaj and Bilku, but I can't remember.
What would your interest have been in... I'm sorry, I spoke over you. What would your interest have been in discovering allegations concerning persistent shortfalls attributable to the computer system have been?
Well, obviously I'd want to know if there was some deficiency in the Horizon system that was causing artificial losses. If there was a problem in there, I wanted to know about it sooner rather than later. The last thing one wants to do is get to 3 or 4 weeks before trial and find that there's been some finding somewhere else that there is a real problem. It's all about risk management and understanding the profile of the evidence.
And where it refers to how many other cases have come to trial and the outcome of those, would you have been interested in both criminal and civil cases? It didn't matter where the allegation had been made of a persistent shortfall attributable to the computer system.
I'd like to say yes. I'm not sure that I was necessarily sufficiently alive to the fact that the Post Office was prosecuting people to have that degree of sophistication in my question. I think it would have just been at that time the open question, what other cases are there, and are they showing there's a problem?
And we know that by this time there was been at least 6 years elapsed since Alan Bates first reported a problem with Horizon. Granted that a case wasn't taken in that case, but the problems from Horizon have been at least, if not well investigated or even accepted, well reported by this point to the Post Office. There should have been some awareness they could pass on to Richard Morgan Casey on these points.
Without understanding what the allegation is in each individual case and what the outcome is, one's not going to know whether that's going to impact on the evidence that's going to be given in the specific trial in relation to which I was being instructed. But I certainly wanted to understand the overall terrain within which the dispute was going to occur.
And so you would cast the question and therefore the net relatively widely at that stage?
Yes. I'm trying to find out what's going on. I'm saying without being so crude to say, give me full and frank disclosure, I want to know, are there any unexploded landmines that I'm going to step on if I go down a particular course? Is there anything that's going to come out that I should know about now? Generally, with sophisticated firms of solicitors, they know that that's what you're asking them when you say, what's out there? I think I would have assumed that with Mr. Beezer and Mr. Dilley.
Did you ever get an answer to this question? We've asked about the Fujitsu having access question. Did you get an answer to this question?
I think in relation to this question, and it's only because of documentation that I've read recently, I think that the Bilku case hadn't even been issued. I hesitate to ask a question. I think I'm right in that. And I don't think I ever got an answer in relation to Bajaj.
But what about the wider question?
I didn't get an answer in relation to that, no.
So there's multiple times where he's asking a question, not getting an answer. I mean, to be fair to him, he does seem to be asking some very pertinent questions, and not many people seem to have wanted to ask these questions. But surely then it would raise your suspicions if you don't get an answer or you don't follow up. Did he just ask these questions and it just fell away? Or, are we saying don't go there? Or are they saying they don't know? It seems to kind of just be no further mention of these questions or the answer or lack thereof going forward, which is somewhat troubling.
At least sorry, that sounds very definite. I do not recall now an answer to that then.
Can we look, please? That can come down, thank you. At FUJ 20155767. It's an email exchange which you're included on. It's just over a month before trial. And if we just go to the foot of the page, please. There's an email from Mr. Dilley of the 31st of October to Brian Pinder, and you're on the copy list. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
And if we just read through it together, one of the witnesses in the Castleton case is Greg Booth, who was the temporary subpostmaster at Marine Drive branch from the 21st of April to the 28th of May 2004. He's now at Newbury. Greg spoke to me last week and reported that his computer froze whilst he was serving a customer and was partway through a transaction. Transaction had not been settled. It related to a postage label. When he logged back in again, the computer had lost the transaction of £1.27. Computer didn't prompt him to try and recover it. Greg is away this week, but I'll be contacting him upon his return to obtain a supplemental witness statement about this point. Prior to then, Greg's evidence was he'd never known the system lose a transaction. In this particular case, Greg was up £1.27 because he'd taken money from a customer. However, I anticipate the reverse would have happened if he'd been paying money out.
And Richard Morgan has told us that he's aware of these screen freezes in general terms, not necessarily them happening at Marine Drive. And this Greg Booth, who was the temporary sub-postmaster there, the incident they're talking about now has presumably happened at his Newbury post office because it's outside of the time that he was temporary SPM at Marine drive, but it's showing when the computer's freezing, it's losing the transaction. Fortunately, in this case, it meant he was up, but it still means there's an inaccurate record, and you've got to presume, like they said, it's the same in reverse. Well, computers freeze, and unstable systems or unstable software, or when you're working with lots of different hardware and software on an operating system, it can be unreliable from time to time. You imagine if you're paying out someone's monthly pension, hundreds of pounds. You imagine if you're reversing a transaction which is for hundreds of pounds, okay? They deal with small transactions, but they also deal with large transactions. It's very easy to see how just a few screen freezes every week, so not even once a day, could quickly tot up to losing thousands of pounds and ultimately end up in these astronomical numbers of 25,000 plus, which some subpostmasters ended with. And this is just one potential aspect of what was going on with Horizon. It seems here to link to what we know about the error handling, or that lack thereof that people have called into question, that essentially, realistically, the peak of Horizon performance would have been if the computer's crashed, or if a transaction based on the data that's logged is incomplete, that it saves the data as it's going along, but then it also highlights, look, you didn't complete this transaction, do you want to complete it now? And give them an opportunity to do it, because if whilst they're busy serving the customer, they reboot the computer, they've taken the money, they're maybe on to the next customer, you're relying on them keeping in the head, oh, what was I doing? What did I click on? You know, it's a lot of cognitive overload for the subpostmaster at that point, and they would be forgiven for forgetting what the money was for, what they were doing at the time, which transaction code they pressed on. They had to go through multiple menus when serving customers. They've already moved on to serving the next customer. It's easy to see how that could be overlooked.
Although this is for a small amount, the principle on the face of it seems concerning, because it suggests that the Horizon system can, albeit rarely, lose transactions. Castleton solicitors will try to exploit any weakness, and we must be prepared for a possible attack on this point. Our counsel has requested that Fujitsu review the Newbury Post Office's Horizon data for those days period to see if you can tell whether the system froze and lost the transaction and what the explanation may be. We have to serve witness statements very shortly. I will have to prepare a supplemental witness statement. Now, Mr. Booth, I think you'll recall, Gregory Booth was one of 3 sub-postmasters that operated the Marine Drive branch immediately after Mr. Castleton had been suspended and was ultimately dismissed. And his evidence was, can you help with this, adduced at trial to seek to demonstrate that those who operated the Marine Drive branch after Mr. Castleton left did so without difficulties being caused by the Horizon system.
I don't remember now, but I'll take your word for it that that's an accurate reflection of the record.
In due course, we needn't turn it up. The judge referred to Mr. Booth's evidence, it's paragraph 24 of his judgment, saying Mr. Booth experienced no significant discrepancies other than 2, which were deliberately induced to check the operation of the Horizon system, having regard to Mr. Castleton's allegations. At the foot of the previous page...
So was the judge not aware then of this £1.27 transaction? Because it's saying save for ones that were deliberately induced, i.e. they were testing it in a live environment. They've not mentioned this £1.27 which they were made aware of.
Just scroll down. Thank you. Your solicitor says, although this is for a small amount, the principle on the face of it seems concerning because it suggests that Horizon can, albeit rarely, lose transactions. Would your view be the same, irrespective of the amount? It's the principle.
Sorry, I didn't mean to overspeak. Yes, and without wishing to try to look too wise after the event, that's why I'm asking for Fujitsu to have a look at it and explain it.
And it seems that even before you received this email, you had spoken to or communicated in some way with Mr. Dilley, because he says our counsel has requested that Fujitsu review.
Yes. That would be what this email suggests.
And so if matters like this had been drawn to your attention, this was a small sum of money, but revealed a principal issue of concern, would you have treated the other revelations in the similar way?
I would hope so, yes.